Alrighty, dudes, we are back again with another system in review video. This time we are going to be talking about Legion Legendaries. I felt like I really enjoyed making the previous system in review video on Azerite, so if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out that system in review for Azerite. I thought that was pretty fun as well to make. But Legion Legendaries are a system that we haven't had in a while, so I just kind of wanted to tell the tale of Legion Legendaries, talk about the good and the bad associated with those things, and talk about what we can learn from them moving forward into Shadowlands, because I see a lot of similarities between the Legion Legendary system in conjunction with the artifact weapon moving into something like Covenants and Soulbinds and Conduits. So we can talk about what we learned from Legion Legendaries and where we should be moving forward. All right, so let's get started into talking about what Legion Legendaries were. So initially, the Legendaries were incredibly hard to grind. So it was easy to get the first two because there was a system that was implemented into the game called Bad Luck Protection. And basically, it's still in the game for some things. I know your coins, like whenever you're trying to roll an item off of a boss, have Bad Luck Protection. Basically, after you roll a certain number of times, your just the opportunity for you to be able to get an item from your bonus roll is increased. Same with Legendaries. Basically, the more content and the more things you did, the higher of a chance of getting a Legendary it became, and you were incentivized. So it was very easy to get the first two Legendaries, but there was a invisible hard cap at 4 that people did not know about. That, in turn, incentivized people to make multiple of the same class, as the delta between good and bad Legendaries could be somewhere in like the even 10% range, especially early on in that expansion. And God forbid, if you wanted to play another spec of the same class, it made it literally impossible, because if you got a Legendary as the wrong spec, it was virtually impossible to get anything else, because spec-wide Bad Luck Protection did not exist yet. It was just character-wide. And that did end up getting changed later on, but it incentivized you. So say you were playing, I don't know. I know Warlocks had a major problem where they didn't know which spec was going to be the best, so they were really just trying to not get like Legendaries as a bad spec. So they were, I think that they were trying to play Affliction in the first tier of EN, but I think a lot of them also were playing Destro. So basically, if they for some reason wanted to swap specs and they already had 2 Legendaries for Destro, and they wanted to swap to AF, they really couldn't, because they would just lose 15% of damage per Legendary. So it was pretty much a daunting task, and like you absolutely could not do it. And if you wanted to play another character like that, you actually should just make another character of that class. I know that Demon Hunter was the most popular character to have a bunch of, because you started your leveling experience at 98, whenever 110 was the cap. So I know people who made many Demon Hunters because of Anger of the Half Giants Legendary Ring was so powerful for them that it was just literally worth, as soon as you hit 110, whenever you got your first Legendary, if it wasn't Anger of the Half Giants, you just pack it up and you make a completely new character, because it was just not worth even playing that character anymore. So that was definitely a thing. So throughout Emerald Nightmare and Trial of Valor, this was the case for how the Legendary system ended up working out. The delta between good and bad Legendaries was insane, and a bunch of like even the generic Legendaries like Safuza's Secret and like Pride As, stuff like that was a major problem. So then Trial of Valor comes out, and then Trial of Valor comes out, this is still the same. The Nighthold pre-patch comes out, and they remove the hard cap of 4 Legendaries and make it significantly easier to acquire Legendaries as a whole. But determined against Legendaries are not a thing yet. I pulled up a really old Wowhead post from 2016, so you guys can look at that. Basically, the TLDR is Blizzard has revealed that the Legendary item soft cap has been removed a week ago, allowing Bad Luck Protection to continue once players acquire more than 4 Legendaries. This change wasn't noticed by players sooner, as many of the players at soft cap were pushing progression during Trial of Valor. More Legendary changes are on the way in 7.1.5, and there are new Legendaries as well as tuning to existing Legendaries like Safuza's Secret. So Safuza's Secret and Pride were both just god-awful at this point, right? And in this as well, that very similar time frame, I think it was about the exact same time, they did a just hot fix of they buffed and nerfed a significant amount of Legendaries at the same time. Basically, all of the really shitty Legendaries they buffed. So, in addition to that, like Echo Wraith and Pride As and Sifus, anything that didn't have a secondary damage effect to it got a lot of extra secondary stats, and that allowed them to just be a little bit more balanced in terms of like whether or not you would actually wear that legendary or not. So that was also something that was added into that as well. All right. So basically, but yeah. So deterministic legendaries are still not a thing yet. Legendaries are now spec specific. The legendary bad luck protection is now spec specific, but even then it still has a problem. Yeah. And they also begin changing non-damaging legendaries to suck significantly less. This is a whole big thing, and basically this in conjunction with the artifact weapon really burned a lot of players out, because for a long time they kept saying there was no hard cap at 4, there's no hard cap at 4, there's no hard cap at 4, and then they're like, all right, we removed the hard cap at 4, and everybody's like, what the fuck? You said that there wasn't one. But like, dude, there's so many problems with it. But yeah, now legendaries are slightly easier to obtain, and you can go past legendary cap of 4. And I think that at this point they amped up like the frequency at which you got legendaries, even though they didn't come out right and say it. I do remember it being significantly easier to get legendaries at this point, but this could also just be how I ended up getting mine. But I'm pretty sure they also amped up the BLP at this point. All right, so Tomb of Sargeras pre-patch, they add one new class legendary, which gave you an extra talent on a row. And then in addition to that, they added one additional legendary per spec, but there was still no deterministic grind. You still had to phone it in like a patch in advance if you want to play a character or just get lucky on legendaries. At this point, it takes you many sources of content to be able to do to be able to get enough legendaries or enough of the correct amount of legendaries to be able to play a character, as most classes required somewhere in the range of like 4, like 3, 4, 5 legendaries to be fairly strong. A lot of these legendaries that they added were pretty good. They would just give you a talent on a specific row, like First Blood for Havoc, Soul of the Forest for all the Druid specs. It gave you a specific talent on a row. These were dope, and then they gave you one more spec-specific one. So pretty much every spec had 12 legendaries. 12 legendaries specifically designed for them, or generics. Which in this case, even a generic can be something like the Soul of the class ring. All right. So with that, Antorus comes out. Nothing changes. And then 2 months after Antorus comes out, they add Wakened Essences, which allow you to buy a legendary for that character if you still have legendaries to acquire. Once you've finished acquiring legendaries for all 4 specs all of the specs of that class, I say all 4 because I was playing a druid, but all of the specs for that class, then you can buy legendaries for that character, or you can buy legendary tokens for that character that were bind on account and mail those tokens over to other characters on your account. And that was actually a pretty good system. Very big change. So basically, Archomancer Vidriel's hard work is paid off and now offers a token to transform a random Legion legendary for your specialization for 1,000 Awakening Essence. Activities now award 6 times as many Awakening Essences as before. You can also continue to come to him for upgrades, the Legion legendary items you already have for the same cost of 300 Awakening Essence. Because basically, if you didn't play that patch, you had to upgrade every single patch, you had to pay to upgrade your legendaries from the previous level, which was whatever, to the new level. And that was really fucking annoying. I forgot about that, but that was actually really annoying to be able to do at the beginning of a patch, because you could typically only upgrade like 2 legendaries per week, so it took you forever to be able to upgrade all of the legendaries that you really wanted to. And that was a whole thing, but in the grand scheme of things, it really could have been worse. That was not just the end all be all. All right, so basically that's just the whole TLDR about the whole entire expansion-wide system, and everything that was encompassed in the whole entire thing. All right, so we got to talk about the good. We're gonna start with the good, because I always like to start off on a positive note and talk about what was good about the legendary system inside of that expansion. First and foremost, they're fun as hell. Basically, all the legendaries, not all legendaries, but a lot of legendaries were fun as hell, especially like the top couple for every single spec. Really changed the spec in the class in a way that made everything more engaging. Pretty much universally, your best legendaries were liked by a lot of the players. Some of them could have been a little bit clunkier in terms of like they didn't flow well rotationally, but by and large, the legendaries were liked by most people. I thought that the Druid legendaries for balance were sick. I thought the Druid legendaries for the whole entire class were all really, really dope. I even played Marksmanship Hunter, and I thought that those were sick as well. So I thought the legendaries as a whole, fun as hell, and interacted with your class in a very unique way. And that's my second point, was that they interacted with your class in a significant way. And I think that's something that's lost about Azerite Power. We talked about that in the last video, is that since the legendaries interact with your class in such a unique way, they're able to change your rotation and like fundamentally change how your class functions. And that's actually really nice because of how strong these legendaries are. They, like, while some of them may not end up changing your rotation, they'll end up impacting your abilities in some other manner. But there is room for those very specific affecting like legendaries to be able to change your rotation. And some of those were cool, some of those were bad, but like there was room to be able to, and it affected your spec down to the point where it was just your spec that it was affecting. And that's something that's really nice. It wasn't just like it wasn't a lot of the time just some generic bullshit. Like Prydes and Safuz were generic bullshit, but even then you still, a lot of the times you had to pick two, so you'd wear something that wasn't just generics. The good is also that you had two options to pick from. I felt like with having 12 choices, having two options for what legendary slots you ended up slotting pieces into, that was really nice. And having those two options to be able to pick from really opened it up and allowed for some diverse builds for a lot of classes, and that otherwise would not even be playing those two legendaries, because the combo themselves created a new build or a new talent path that you would end up running because that was slightly more optimal than something else. And then the last thing that I had was that it's dynamic and it fit different niches fairly regularly. So you had something that was like really good for patchwork single target, and then you had something that was good for intermittent cleave. You had something that was good for burst. You had something that was good for sustained AoE or burst AoE. It's like you had something that would was dynamic and fit every single niche. You had something like Safuz's Secret, which was very infrequently used in Raid, but very frequently used in Mythic Plus because it required you to be able to hard CC mobs. You can't hard CC mobs all that often in Raid, but you can hard CC mobs fairly regularly in Mythic Plus, and that was a very good legendary for what it did. And a lot of the legendaries were dynamic in that regard, and it felt fun because you had more opportunities to be able to pick like when you were wearing stuff that was specific, because I think also due to in part to the fact that Mythic Plus you were able to gear swap, so you're able to fill like in those niches and like where the legendaries will win those points like really should be, like when they would otherwise be shining. So that was that was pretty nice. All right, let's talk about the bad. There was some major fundamental issues with this system. First and foremost, it was hard as hell to grind. Like, dude, the legendaries, especially at the beginning of the expansion, were so fucking annoying. And I think ever to the point where you get, like, your main choice is to make another character of the same class. I think that is just a huge problem because you need, like, legendaries because your bad luck protection has already effectively run out. I think that whenever your best choice to be able to gain enough power over the power that gearing a new character would provide, you're taking your pre-existing mythic geared character and going into there on a fresh character because it has better legendaries. That's a huge issue. So legendaries being hard as hell to grind was just, that was bad. All right, the second problem: why play? And I wrote it as why play because there are a lot of people who got terrible ass legendaries and didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then they had to ask themselves, what is the point of even playing anymore? Why don't I just quit? And that in of itself is a huge dilemma where you ever have to ask yourself, why am I even playing this if I'm going to be this suboptimal? This is why I worry about Covenants reaching to the point where you're going to be like mega suboptimal and something like that. So say you're the best for Raid, and you know you're the best for Raid, But then you're like, your friends ask you why you should come do Mythic Plus with us. And you say, no, I don't want to come do Mythic Plus with you. What's the point? I'm going to do significantly less damage than somebody else who would be optimized for Mythic Plus. You should grab somebody else. And whenever you reach that point, because people are going to be apathetic about their system and they're like, oh shit, this other guy who has a choice in his covenant and he chose a different covenant than I, whenever you end up having stuff like that happen, that's also a major dilemma. I saw this with the Legion Legendary system, and I actually saw a lot of people quit the game over it. I worry that conduits and covenants are going to be the same way. So I do genuinely worry that those are going to be the same way. All right, next thing. It took 2 major patches to get the system in a spot where it was okay. And honestly, Azerite had a very added benefit of the fact that, by and large, it only took 1 patch to put it in a spot where it was not just god-awful. Legendaries for 2 full patches, all the way through Antorus even, were just god-awful. And it was just impossible to be able to even gear up multiple characters a lot of the time, because it was just so daunting to be able to grab like that many legendaries, because you did need 4 or 5 for a lot of classes to be just what is fully optimized. So hey bro, catch you on the flip side and say if you ever wanted to play. I guess my next thing is, you can't really play multi-specking is just not a thing. And because like you needed to be your main spec at all times, which for like which for pure DPS classes like mage, hunter, rogue, like generally they're going to play what is the best DPS that patch, but it reduced their multi-specking ability to be able to like. So mages had to swap from Trial of Valor, most of them played fire, to Nighthold, most of them played frost because double Ice Lance was a thing, and they had to completely pray to RNG gods that they got the Ice Lance bracers, and like I don't remember what the hell else other people play. Like I don't remember what else people got. Like I think it was the generic ring, like the bloodless ring, I want to say is what it was. But the point where you really can't multi-spec as a class without being 10-15% less effective, that's just a huge issue. And I think that this is where I'm reaching to on Covenants too, because they're like, some things are going to be the best for your main spec, and some things that are going to be probably like, so say it's the best for your main spec, it can be decent for like an off spec, but say you're playing what is the best for Balanced Druid, which is my main spec, and then say I want to tank. For whatever reason, I'm feeling like I want to play Guardian that day. There is some shit that can be for Bear that's like god awful. Like, and to the point where there's going to be such dynamic choices that you end up getting and reaching that point where it's like, why should I even play this? Like, this is the why play thing that's in my notes. It's like, why would I play this? Grab somebody else. This is not even worth your time or my time because it's going to be that bad. And maybe that's just a high level like player philosophy, but that's my general philosophy as well. It's like, I feel like I would be hindering the group. You should get somebody else. I don't want to. I will self-lob myself so you can get somebody of a higher caliber. All right, the last thing I have under the bad is that the delta between the good and bad legendaries was way too high. Especially at the beginning of the expansion, there was some shit that was like damage losses because they were poorly statted for your class, and then they were just poorly statted for your class, and your class only wanted such and such stat. I know mages had this problem where if they got like, I want to say it was like Pride As, and if they got Pride As early on, they literally just banked that shit, and it was just not worth wearing. And it's like, okay, well, whenever your legendary is not worth equipping, you'd rather bank it, you know there's a major problem. So the delta between good and bad legendaries was way too high, where some were worth damage losses, and then some of them were 10 to 15% damage gains. So those are all the bad things. In general, I see that the legendary and the artifact weapon system have a lot of connections with the conduits and the Covenant system coming into Shadowlands, and I really hope that they can pick up a lot of the information from the things that happen with the legendary system and make sure that it doesn't happen with the Covenant system. I think that's why people are crying out for swappable covenants is because they don't want to be trapped into this why play phenomenon where it's like just not even worth to even engage in the content that they would actually be preferred to do, or if they want to play multiple specs, or if they want to play multiple classes. And that's why I think that generally the devs should be looking at this and thinking, how is this going to affect people's ability to be able to play content outside of just like, so say Raid is their preferred level of content, but they also want to do Mythic Plus, like they should be able to also do Mythic Plus at not a significant disparity. And I also think that they should probably not do it at any level of disparity. I don't know if swapping covenants is like the real solution, but I think that they shouldn't have a major loss. All right, beyond that, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.